The Book of Enoch, an ancient text shrouded in mystery and long hidden from the mainstream Christian canon, has captivated scholars, theologians, and spiritual seekers for centuries. Yet its contents are so controversial that it was ultimately banned, its truths suppressed, leaving only tantalizing fragments in the dusty corners of forgotten libraries. But why? What knowledge did this book hold that threatened the established narratives of faith and divine order? Was it merely the fantasy of an ancient mind, or did it contain secrets that are still highly relevant today? To understand the significance of the Book of Enoch, we must first delve into its origins, its place in the early days of Christianity, and its eventual exclusion from the Holy Scriptures. Some consider it to be the missing link between the Old Testament and the New, a bridge connecting the story of creation with the apocalyptic visions found in Revelation. While others view it as a warning from the past, one that highlights the dangers of forbidden knowledge, the rebellion of divine beings, and the dire consequences of humanity's fall into sin. It tells the story of the Watcher's angels who descended to earth, intermingled with humanity, and shared secrets that were never meant to be known. The Watchers, as described in the Book of Enoch, were no mere celestial beings. They were powerful and wise, tasked with overseeing human beings, but instead turned their attention to forbidden knowledge. This led to the birth of the Nephilim giants, who roamed the earth, wreaking havoc on the world. But the story does not end there. The Book of Enoch does not just recount an ancient rebellion. It offers prophecies, warnings, and visions of a future that is yet to unfold. What makes this book so dangerous, so compelling, is the question it raises. What if the traditional interpretations of good and evil, of angels and demons, have been warped over time? What if the fallen angels weren't the monsters we've been told they were, but rather misunderstood beings who were punished for sharing truths that humanity was not yet ready to hear? The book holds a mirror to the world we live in today, filled with dark secrets about the abuse of power, the manipulation of knowledge, and the consequences of defying divine will. As we embark on this journey to uncover the hidden truths of the Book of Enoch, we will explore its theological implications, its connections to other religious texts, and the ways in which it challenges our understanding of angels, demons, and the very nature of humanity itself. Join us as we unravel the mysteries of this ancient text, because what you're about to hear might just change everything you thought you knew about the divine, the human, and the cosmic battle between good and evil. The Book of Enoch was banned for a reason. The question is, are we ready to confront its truths? To truly grasp the significance of the Book of Enoch, we must first understand its origins. This ancient text, believed to have been written around the 3rd century BCE, has a fascinating history that intertwines with the very foundations of both Judaism and early Christianity. Its origins are shrouded in mystery, with scholars debating its authorship and dating. Some attribute it to the patriarch Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, as described in the Hebrew Bible. Others believe it was the work of several authors, each contributing to its elaborate cosmology and prophecies. Despite the ambiguity surrounding its origins, what's certain is that the Book of Enoch was once highly regarded by ancient Jewish communities, particularly in the region surrounding the Dead Sea, and it had a strong influence on early Christian thought. The Book of Enoch's most significant contribution lies in its portrayal of the celestial realm, which was far more intricate than the simple dichotomy of good versus evil found in many religious texts. The book expands on the brief mention of Enoch in the Bible, presenting him as a divine mediator who journeys through the heavens, witnessing the hidden truths of the cosmos. One of its key elements is the vision of the Watcher's angels, who descend to earth to impart knowledge to humankind. This knowledge, while vast and powerful, ultimately leads to chaos and destruction, as the angels break divine law by sharing forbidden secrets with humanity. This knowledge wasn't just the typical lore of gods and men, but rather teachings about how the world worked on a fundamental level, astrology, magic, warfare, and even the creation of hybrid beings, the Nephilim, who would come to dominate the earth. The implications of these teachings are vast, and they challenge the very nature of human existence. What would it mean for humans to possess knowledge of the universe, of creation itself, and of the very forces that bind all life together? The Book of Enoch wrestles with this question by portraying the consequences of this knowledge falling into the wrong hands. Early Christian communities, especially those in Ethiopia, revered the Book of Enoch, and it was included in their scriptures for many centuries. In fact, it is still part of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible to this day. However, as Christianity became more institutionalized, the Book of Enoch was gradually excluded from the canon of most other Christian traditions. Church leaders such as Saint Jerome and Augustine argued that the book was too apocalyptic, too controversial, and that its teachings didn't align with the more orthodox views of angels and divine hierarchy that were taking hold in the early church. The removal of the Book of Enoch from the biblical canon wasn't a simple matter of theological disagreement. There were also political and social factors at play. The Church, in its effort to solidify its authority and unify its teachings, deemed the book too radical and too threatening to the established order. The implications of the Book of Enoch's teachings about the nature of angels' humanity and divine judgment didn't fit neatly into the emerging narrative of Christianity, which sought to focus on salvation through Christ rather than the complex celestial battles and cosmic order depicted in Enoch's writings. Despite its exclusion from the canonical Bible, the Book of Enoch continued to circulate in various forms. It was preserved in Ethiopia, where it was studied and revered as a sacred text. In the modern era, the book was rediscovered by Western scholars in the 18th century, and its significance has been gradually recognized once more. Today, many people view the Book of Enoch as a vital key to understanding the deeper hidden layers of biblical history and prophecy. It challenges us to reconsider what we think we know about angels, demons, and the very foundation of our spiritual beliefs. As we move forward, it's important to keep in mind that the Book of Enoch was not just an ancient story lost to time. It's a book that, for some, still holds profound spiritual insights that resonate with the modern world. Whether it's the warnings about forbidden knowledge, the divine punishment of rebellious angels, or the intricate depictions of the cosmos, the Book of Enoch offers a view of the spiritual world that is at once ancient and timeless. Now that we've explored the origins and significance of the Book of Enoch, let's delve deeper into its most provocative themes, the Watchers and their forbidden knowledge. What was the true purpose of these angels? And why were their actions so controversial? The story of the Watchers begins with their descent from the heavens, as described in the Book of Enoch. These angels sent to earth to observe humanity and guide them instead became entangled in a forbidden rebellion that would forever alter the course of human history. According to the Book of Enoch, the Watchers, originally tasked with overseeing the righteous path of humanity, came to earth and became enamored with human women. This illicit union led to the birth of the Nephilim, a race of giants who wreaked havoc on earth. The Watchers, by choosing to intermix with humanity, broke divine law, defying the natural order of creation and introducing chaos into the world. But their actions weren't just limited to physical corruption. The Watchers also shared with humanity knowledge that was never meant to be known by mortal beings. This forbidden knowledge spanned multiple domains: astrology, the art of warfare, the crafting of weapons, the making of magic, and the deep mysteries of nature and the cosmos. The Book of Enoch describes how these angels taught humans the secrets of heaven and earth, imparting wisdom that would ultimately corrupt humanity's soul and give rise to immense evil. They introduce knowledge about the stars, the movement of celestial bodies, and the mechanics of the universe, elevating humanity's understanding, but also burdening them with information that they were ill-prepared to handle. What was the significance of these teachings? In the ancient world, knowledge of the heavens and the earth was considered sacred, reserved for the gods. The Book of Enoch makes it clear that this kind of knowledge was powerful but dangerous. The Watchers were not simply providing humans with tools for survival or enlightenment. They were introducing knowledge that would alter the very fabric of existence. Astrology, for example, gave people the ability to predict the movements of the stars and, in some interpretations, control their fate. Magic allowed humans to tap into the forces of creation, bending the laws of nature. Warfare knowledge enabled them to wield destruction on an unimaginable scale, pushing the boundaries of human conflict. These gifts, though potent, came with a price, one that humanity was ill-equipped to bear. The Watchers' teachings were not just a gift, they were a burden. They imparted the arts of alchemy, magic, and weaponry, tools of power and destruction, but they also introduced vanity, pride, and hubris into human hearts. The Nephilim, the giants born from the union of angels and humans, symbolized this corruption. These monstrous beings were not only physically powerful, but were also the embodiment of the corrupting influence of forbidden knowledge. They oppressed humanity, bringing suffering and chaos wherever they went. The Nephilim were a direct result of the Watchers' choice to impart knowledge, and their existence was seen as a perversion of the natural order. The Book of Enoch does not present the Watchers as mere rebels, but as beings who were once entrusted with great responsibility. They were meant to protect and guide humanity, but instead, they chose to disobey divine instructions. The question that the Book of Enoch raises is why the Watchers chose this path of rebellion. Was it an act of love, or was it born out of pride and a desire to wield power? Were the Watchers motivated by a desire to help humanity reach its potential, or were they driven by selfish desires? The answers are ambiguous, and this ambiguity is one of the reasons why the Book of Enoch was considered too controversial for inclusion in the Bible. Its teachings challenged the established notions of divine order suggesting that even angels could fall from grace. Moreover, the knowledge given to humanity was not without consequence. The Book of Enoch tells us that this knowledge led to the corruption of human society. The Watchers' teachings were not just about enhancing human capabilities. They also introduced immorality, witchcraft, and violence. It was not simply the birth of the Nephilim that caused the downfall of humanity. It was the teachings that accompanied their existence. This was knowledge that would ultimately lead to the deluge, the great flood that wiped out the corrupted world and gave humanity a fresh start. The flood, as depicted in the Book of Enoch, was both a judgment and a cleansing, a divine response to the chaos caused by the Watchers and their forbidden gifts. As the Book of Enoch unfolds, it becomes clear that the Watchers' story is not just about angels who defied God. It is also about humanity's potential to either rise or fall based on the knowledge they seek. The Watchers gave humanity the tools to shape their own destiny. But those tools were double-edged swords, capable of either uplifting or destroying them. The Watchers' fall from grace serves as a powerful cautionary tale about the dangers of knowledge and power, especially when it is obtained outside of divine will. The Watchers' influence on the world did not end with the flood. Their actions had far-reaching consequences, the effects of which are still felt in the spiritual world. In the coming sections, we will explore the Nephilim, the giants born from these fallen angels, and the lasting impact they had on the ancient world. We will also examine the judgment that followed the rebellion of the Watchers, and how this judgment plays a central role in the apocalyptic visions of the Book of Enoch. What makes the Watchers' story so relevant today is the timeless warning it offers about the pursuit of forbidden knowledge. Are we, like the Watchers, prepared to wield the knowledge we possess responsibly? Or are we doomed to repeat their mistakes? The Book of Enoch leaves us to ponder the answers, and in doing so, it beckons us to confront the hidden truths that still lie beneath the surface of our world. The Nephilim born of the union between the Watchers and human women are one of the most enigmatic and controversial aspects of the Book of Enoch. These giants who once roamed the earth are described as beings of immense size and strength, and their existence is seen as both a corruption of divine order and a direct consequence of the forbidden knowledge imparted by the Watchers. The Book of Enoch portrays the Nephilim as a race that, although physically powerful, were deeply corrupt in their nature, products of both divine rebellion and the manipulation of human nature. In many ancient cultures, giants were not merely mythological creatures. They were considered real, tangible beings. The Bible makes only a brief mention of the Nephilim in Genesis 6:4, calling them the sons of God and the daughters of men. However, the Book of Enoch expands on this narrative, providing a more detailed account of their origins, actions, and their eventual downfall. These giants, as described in the Book of Enoch, were not merely superhuman in size. They were also imbued with unnatural powers, making them both awe-inspiring and terrifying to the human population. The Nephilim's influence on the ancient world was profound. They were said to have waged wars, oppressed humanity, and spread chaos wherever they went. Their existence was marked by violence, greed, and a complete disregard for the sanctity of life. The Book of Enoch paints them as a symbol of what happens when divine order is perverted. Beings who were meant to be guardians of humanity became the architects of its destruction. They exploited the knowledge given to them by the Watchers, using it to manipulate the forces of nature, control the minds of men, and amass power. In this way, they were the ultimate expression of the corruption that the Watchers' teachings introduced to Earth. But the Nephilim were not invincible. Despite their immense power, they too faced divine judgment. The Book of Enoch reveals that their existence ultimately became unsustainable. As the Nephilim grew in number and strength, their actions became more erratic and destructive. The natural balance of the world began to collapse under the weight of their presence. Their violence and chaos led to the divine decision to cleanse the earth through the Great Flood, which would wipe away the corruption they represented. The Nephilim's role in the flood narrative is significant. In the Book of Enoch, it is made clear that the giants' unrighteousness was one of the primary reasons for the flood. The flood, according to Enoch's vision, was not just a cleansing of human sin, but also a divine act of purging the earth of the Nephilim and the influence of the Watchers. God's judgment upon the giants was not simply an act of wrath, it was a necessary step to restore balance to the world, to eradicate the unnatural offspring of the fallen angels, and return the earth to its intended order. However, the Book of Enoch also suggests that the influence of the Nephilim did not end with the flood. Their legacy continued through their bloodlines, which were believed to have survived in the hearts of certain human tribes. The concept of the Nephilim did not fade into obscurity. Rather, it became a cautionary tale, a symbol of what happens when divine boundaries are crossed and sacred knowledge is abused. The Nephilim, as portrayed in the Book of Enoch, also carry a symbolic weight. They represent the consequences of seeking knowledge that is not meant to be known, of attempting to transcend the boundaries set by divine law. Their existence serves as a reminder that some knowledge, especially knowledge that can alter the course of creation, should remain hidden lest it bring about chaos and destruction. The Nephilim are the living proof of what happens when humanity becomes intoxicated by power and knowledge, losing sight of its place in the divine order. In the modern world, the concept of the Nephilim has continued to captivate the imagination of many. The idea of giants, whether literal or symbolic, has persisted in various mythologies, folklore, and even popular culture. But the Nephilim are not just the stuff of legend. Their story, as told in the Book of Enoch, carries deeper lessons for today's world. The question the Nephilim raise is, how far are we willing to go in our pursuit of knowledge and power? In the next section, we will explore the judgment placed upon the Watchers and the Nephilim. What consequences did they face for their rebellion? And how does this judgment relate to the larger cosmic order? The answers lie in the divine retribution that follows their transgressions, a punishment that extends far beyond the flood. The rebellion of the Watchers and the resulting chaos brought forth by the Nephilim did not go unpunished. According to the Book of Enoch, the judgment of the Watchers and their offspring, the Nephilim became an inevitable part of the cosmic order. The punishment meted out to the Watchers is one of the most dramatic moments in the Book of Enoch, and it serves as a pivotal point in the story. What was once a divine mandate to observe and guide humanity, transformed into a transgression of cosmic proportions, one that would alter the very nature of divine interaction with the human race. In the Book of Enoch, God's response to the Watchers' rebellion is both swift and absolute. The Watchers, after teaching forbidden knowledge to humanity and causing the birth of the Nephilim, were summoned to a divine tribunal where they were held accountable for their actions. The archangels Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel were given the task of executing the divine judgment. This council of angels, who stood in the presence of God, was instructed to imprison the rebellious angels in the depths of the earth, specifically in a place known as the Abyss, a dark, desolate prison designed to hold them until the day of final judgment. The Book of Enoch provides a detailed description of how the Watchers were bound by chains and cast into the abyss, awaiting the end of days when they would face the ultimate judgment. Their punishment is not merely to be confined to a place of suffering, but to remain there in isolation, deprived of their former powers and separated from the rest of creation. This act of divine retribution symbolizes the restoration of order and balance in the cosmos, as the Watchers' defiance had threatened the very structure of heaven and earth. The Book of Enoch makes it clear that their fall from grace is not a mere historical incident, but a cosmic breach that required a radical correction. What makes the Watchers' punishment so significant is the cosmic symbolism embedded within it. The binding of the Watchers in the abyss is not just a punishment. It is a sign that the laws of the universe, laws that govern both the spiritual and physical realms, cannot be violated without consequences. The Book of Enoch teaches us that no being, not even an angel, is above the divine order. The Watchers, in their thirst for forbidden knowledge and their lust for power, sought to transcend their appointed roles. Their fall from grace, therefore, serves as a warning that overstepping one's boundaries leads not to enlightenment, but to corruption and destruction. In addition to the judgment of the Watchers, the Nephilim also faced their own divine retribution. The giants, as the offspring of the angels, were marked as beings of corruption and violence. Their existence, born out of defiance against divine law, could not be allowed to continue. The Book of Enoch reveals that God decreed the death of the Nephilim, and they were doomed to be destroyed in the great flood that would cleanse the earth. The flood in this context becomes not just a physical cleansing of the earth, but a divine act of restoring order by eradicating the corruption brought about by the Watchers and the Nephilim. The death of the Nephilim serves as a critical turning point in the narrative of the Book of Enoch. It marks the moment when divine judgment is enacted upon the physical manifestation of the Watchers' disobedience. The giants, once mighty and unstoppable, are reduced to nothing more than remnants of a chaotic past. The flood, which is widely known in the biblical narrative as the means of Noah's survival, is in the Book of Enoch, reimagined as the ultimate punishment for the corruption of the world. The waters of the flood do not just destroy humanity's sin, they annihilate the beings that were the direct cause of that sin, the Nephilim, who symbolized the breaking of divine laws. The judgment of the Watchers and the Nephilim speaks to the broader themes of divine justice and the inevitability of consequence. It reveals a view of the cosmos in which every action, whether by angels or humans, has far-reaching effects. The Book of Enoch stresses that transgressions against divine order, whether by angels or men, are met with a correction that restores balance. This correction may come in the form of punishment, but it also acts as a force of cosmic realignment, ensuring that creation remains intact and true to its divine purpose. But the judgment of the Watchers and Nephilim is not the end of the story. The Book of Enoch makes it clear that their actions, though punished, will echo throughout history. The angels' fall and the corruption they introduced will not be forgotten. In fact, it is their transgressions that become the foundation for the apocalyptic visions of the future, which we will explore in the coming sections. As we move into the next part, we will examine the prophecies of Enoch, visions of the future apocalyptic in nature, that reveal the lasting impact of the Watchers' rebellion. These prophecies are not just predictions of doom, but warnings about the dangers of tampering with divine law. Through these prophecies, Enoch uncovers truths about the fate of humanity, the end times, and the eventual triumph of righteousness. As we move further into the narrative of the Book of Enoch, we encounter the prophecies that Enoch himself receives, revealing an intricate vision of the future that stretches far beyond the scope of his time. These visions, while apocalyptic in nature, are deeply symbolic, packed with divine warnings and lessons for humanity. Enoch, as both a prophet and a celestial witness, is shown the events of the coming days' events that will affect not only the world of the Nephilim and the Watchers, but also the entirety of creation. His prophecies are framed within a cosmic understanding, where the consequences of moral failure, divine rebellion, and human sin reach their climactic end. Enoch's visions begin with an astonishing insight into the ultimate fate of the Watchers and their corrupting influence on humanity. He sees a future where these fallen angels will face their final judgment in a divine court, their actions fully exposed and their punishment sealed. This moment of divine retribution is not just a singular event, but part of a larger cosmic drama where the forces of good and evil are destined to confront each other at the end of time. Enoch's vision connects the rebellion of the Watchers to the very fabric of creation, suggesting that their actions have consequences far beyond the earth, affecting the celestial order itself. As we explore these prophecies, it becomes clear that the Book of Enoch offers more than just a narrative about fallen angels. It presents a profound vision of the cosmic battle between light and darkness knowledge and ignorance order and chaos. One of the key prophecies involves the coming of a chosen one, a messianic figure who will serve as the agent of divine judgment. This figure, often identified with the Messiah in Christian traditions, will bring justice to the world, overthrowing the forces of evil and establishing an eternal kingdom of peace and righteousness. Enoch's visions provide a picture of a future where the wrongs of the past will be righted and the world will be restored to its original divine order. The role of this chosen one is pivotal. Enoch sees a world where the righteous are separated from the wicked, and the heavens themselves bear witness to this final reckoning. The prophecy is both a warning and a promise. A warning that humanity's choices will have eternal consequences, and a promise that those who endure in righteousness will be rewarded. The Book of Enoch's prophecies connect directly to Christian apocalyptic themes, echoing the visions found in the Book of Revelation, where the forces of evil are defeated by the return of Christ and the establishment of God's eternal kingdom. But what is most striking about Enoch's prophecies is their emphasis on the concept of judgment, not just for humanity, but for all beings, celestial and terrestrial alike. The Book of Enoch reveals that the coming judgment will not be limited to humans or even the Nephilim, but will encompass all beings who have fallen out of divine order. The Watchers, the Nephilim, and even the fallen stars are shown to be accountable for their actions. Enoch's visions suggest that divine justice transcends human understanding, and that the forces of light and darkness will face their ultimate reckoning in a way that restores cosmic balance. In addition to the apocalyptic judgment, Enoch's prophecies include visions of the new world that will be established after the final judgment. This world, free from the corruption of the Watchers and the chaos introduced by the Nephilim, will be a place of eternal peace and harmony. The righteous will be exalted, and the earth itself will be restored to its original divine state. The prophecy of the new world is a vision of redemption, a promise that even in the wake of great suffering, there is hope for restoration and renewal. The Book of Enoch, in this regard, mirrors many other religious texts, offering a vision of the ultimate triumph of good over evil. But beyond the immediate implications for the Watchers and Nephilim, Enoch's prophecies also speak to the broader cosmic order. The Book of Enoch suggests that the corruption introduced by the fallen angels is not just a localized event, but part of a larger cosmic struggle, a battle that stretches across time and space. The judgment of the Watchers and the Nephilim serves as a reminder that the divine order cannot be ignored or violated without consequences. But it also speaks to the power of divine redemption, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, there is a higher purpose that transcends our immediate understanding. Enoch's prophecies are not merely about future events. They are deeply spiritual in nature, urging us to reflect on our own relationship with knowledge, power, and divine law. The Book of Enoch challenges us to question how we as humans engage with the knowledge that we possess. Are we like the Watchers, using knowledge irresponsibly, or are we seeking to live in harmony with the divine order? The book's apocalyptic visions encourage us to reflect on the consequences of our choices, both on a personal and collective level. As we conclude this exploration of Enoch's prophecies, we begin to see the broader picture. The Book of Enoch is not just an ancient text, but a timeless warning. It speaks to the dangers of seeking knowledge without wisdom, of attempting to transcend the boundaries of divine law, and of the inevitable consequences that follow. But it also offers hope, a vision of redemption and restoration that transcends the judgment and suffering of the past. It reminds us that, despite the corruption and chaos introduced by the Watchers and the Nephilim, divine justice will prevail, and a new world will be born from the ashes of the old. In the next section, we will turn our attention to the key event in the Book of Enoch, the banning of the book itself. Why was this powerful text excluded from the biblical canon? And what did the early church leaders fear about its teachings? The answers to these questions reveal the deeper reasons behind the Book of Enoch's controversial exclusion and its enduring influence on spiritual seekers today. The exclusion of the Book of Enoch from the biblical canon is one of the most intriguing and mysterious chapters in the history of religious texts. For centuries, it was regarded as a critical part of early Christian thought, yet it was ultimately deemed unfit for inclusion in the Bible. To understand why the Book of Enoch was banned, we must consider both theological and political factors that shaped the early Christian church's decisions regarding its sacred texts. In its early years, Christianity was still a nascent movement, struggling to define itself within the context of the broader Roman Empire. Church leaders, as well as political authorities, sought to establish a unified doctrine that would not only define Christian identity, but also consolidate power. During this formative period, numerous texts circulated, some of which were considered more controversial than others. The Book of Enoch was one such text. Its themes of divine rebellion, celestial warfare, and a radically different understanding of angels, demons, and the end times posed a challenge to the emerging orthodox views of Christian theology. One of the main reasons the Book of Enoch was excluded was its portrayal of angels and the Nephilim. In traditional Christian theology, angels were seen as pure, obedient servants of God, whose sole purpose was to carry out His will. The Book of Enoch, however, presents a more complex and nuanced view of angels, particularly the Watchers. These angels are not merely benevolent beings, but are shown as falling from grace, disobeying God's command by descending to earth and teaching humanity forbidden knowledge. This rebellious depiction of angels contradicted the more sanitized divine image of angels that was becoming popular within the early church. The church fathers feared that such an understanding of angels would undermine the authority of the church, which had worked hard to establish a clear distinction between the divine and the human, between the sacred and the profane. Moreover, the Book of Enoch introduced apocalyptic imagery that was too unsettling for many early Christian leaders. While apocalyptic visions were not unfamiliar to Christian theology, as seen in the Book of Revelation, the Book of Enoch's portrayal of the end times was much more radical. The book emphasized the coming of a messianic figure who would judge the fallen angels and restore divine order, but it also presented a vision of cosmic justice that included the punishment of angels and giants, beings that in traditional Christianity were beyond reproach. This apocalyptic vision was far more dramatic and violent than the teachings of the early Christian church, which sought to emphasize Christ's role as a savior rather than a judge. Another reason for the exclusion of the Book of Enoch was its association with early Jewish mysticism and traditions that were increasingly at odds with the developing Christian orthodoxy. The Book of Enoch is deeply rooted in Jewish apocalyptic thought, drawing on themes found in other intertestamental writings, such as the Book of Daniel and the Dead Sea Scrolls. Its emphasis on divine judgment, the rebellion of celestial beings, and the restoration of order mirrored Jewish ideas that were not widely accepted by the Christian authorities at the time. By the 4th century CE, as the Church solidified its power and influence, there was a concerted effort to distance Christianity from its Jewish roots and redefine it as a distinct and separate faith. The Book of Enoch, with its strong ties to Jewish apocalyptic traditions, became an inconvenient text that threatened to blur the lines between Judaism and Christianity. Politically, the exclusion of the Book of Enoch also had a strategic element. The early church, under the guidance of figures like St. Jerome and Augustine, wanted to ensure that the canon they were building would support their vision of Christianity as the dominant unifying force in the Roman Empire. To achieve this, the church needed to consolidate power and eliminate any competing or divergent interpretations of Christian doctrine. The Book of Enoch, with its radical teachings on angels, divine judgment, and the role of the Watchers, presented a theological challenge to the Church's authority. By removing the book from the canon, the Church was able to assert its dominance and control over Christian thought, solidifying its authority in shaping the narrative of salvation and divine justice. Despite being excluded from the canonical Bible, the Book of Enoch continued to be studied and revered by various groups throughout history. In the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, it remained part of the sacred scriptures, and its teachings continued to influence spiritual thought in certain regions. In the West, the book faded into obscurity, its contents hidden from the public eye for centuries. However, in the 18th century, the Book of Enoch was rediscovered in Ethiopia, and its significance began to resurface. Scholars started to recognize the book's profound influence on early Christian thought, and modern readers began to explore its apocalyptic themes, its depiction of angels, and its warnings about the abuse of knowledge and power. The banning of the Book of Enoch raises questions about what we are willing to hide or exclude in our search for truth. In the case of the early church, the decision to remove the book from the Bible was made to preserve a certain vision of Christianity, one that emphasized salvation and redemption over judgment and apocalyptic punishment. But the book's exclusion also reflects a broader human tendency to suppress knowledge that challenges established power structures. The Book of Enoch in many ways embodies the dangers of forbidden knowledge and the lengths to which those in power will go to protect their version of truth. As we reflect on the reasons behind the banning of the Book of Enoch, it's important to ask, what does this tell us about the nature of truth and the role of authority in shaping our understanding of the divine? In the next section, we will explore how the Book of Enoch's teachings continue to resonate in the modern world and why it remains relevant today. We will also examine how the truths it contains, though hidden for centuries, can still illuminate our understanding of the cosmos, the divine, and humanity's place in the great cosmic order. As we conclude our deep dive into the Book of Enoch, it becomes clear that this ancient text is far more than just a relic of a distant past. It is a timeless source of wisdom, warning, and insight. The Book of Enoch was banned, hidden away, and dismissed by the powers that be for reasons that go far beyond theological disagreements. It challenged established norms, presented radical ideas about divine justice, the nature of angels, and the future of humanity. Ideas that were too potent, too dangerous for the authorities who sought to define and control the religious narrative of their time. But in uncovering the truths of the Book of Enoch, we are not simply revisiting an ancient story. We are confronting questions that still resonate today. The rebellion of the Watchers and the birth of the Nephilim serve as warnings to us in the modern world about the dangers of seeking knowledge that we are not yet ready to handle. In an age where information is more accessible than ever, we must ask ourselves, are we equipped to handle the power we possess, or are we like the Watchers on the brink of crossing boundaries that should never be crossed? The cosmic judgment rendered upon the Watchers and their offspring speaks not just to a single moment in history, but to a universal principle that all things are held accountable to divine law. No matter how powerful, no matter how revered every being, whether human or angelic, must adhere to the natural order set by the Creator. The Book of Enoch teaches us that rebellion against this order has far-reaching consequences that affect not just the individuals involved, but the very fabric of creation itself. In the midst of these divine judgments, however, we also find hope. The Book of Enoch does not simply focus on the wrath of God, it also reveals the promise of restoration. The messianic figure who will bring justice, the ultimate triumph of good over evil, and the creation of a new world free from the corruption of the past. These are not just esoteric concepts, they are profound truths that speak to the deepest longings of the human heart. The Book of Enoch reminds us that, despite the darkness, redemption is always possible, and the divine order will eventually be restored, as it has been since the dawn of time. The relevance of the Book of Enoch in our modern age cannot be overstated. While it was excluded from the biblical canon, its themes of knowledge, power, judgment, and redemption continue to echo in our world today. In an era where humanity is grappling with the ethical implications of technology, genetic manipulation, and the pursuit of forbidden knowledge, the story of the Watchers serves as a powerful reminder of the potential consequences of overstepping our bounds. The Nephilim, with their hybrid nature, represent the dangers of crossing natural boundaries, and their story serves as a cautionary tale about the limits of human ambition. But the Book of Enoch is not merely a text of warning, it is also a call to reflection. It challenges us to look within ourselves and ask whether we are living in harmony with the divine order, or whether we are like the Watchers, tempted by the allure of knowledge and power that we are not yet ready to wield. It beckons us to question our understanding of good and evil, of divine justice and mercy, and of our role in the cosmic story. As we wrap up our journey through the Book of Enoch, we are left with more questions than answers. Questions that will continue to resonate long after the video ends. The mysteries of the Book of Enoch are not easily solved, nor should they be. It is a text that demands contemplation, introspection, and a willingness to grapple with difficult truths. It invites us to look beyond the surface, to seek out the hidden knowledge that had been concealed for so long, and to consider the impact that knowledge will have on our spiritual journey. While the Book of Enoch was hidden away for centuries, its lessons are still waiting to be discovered, understood, and applied. As we move forward, let us do so with the awareness that the wisdom contained in this ancient text has the power to guide us through the complexities of our modern world. And perhaps in uncovering its truths, we will find the clarity we need to navigate the challenges of our time and restore the balance that was once lost. Thank you for joining us on this journey. The Book of Enoch may have been banned for a reason, but its message is as relevant today as it ever was. We invite you to continue exploring, continue questioning, and continue seeking the hidden truths that lie beneath the surface of our world.